Well, hi everybody. This is Dr. Schroeder with this week's video introduction to week number 2 of our course in evidence-based practice. And we're off to a really good start. You had one primary goal or one primary assignment this week, and that was to answer the discussion question that was broken into a few different parts. The first part was to identify a nursing problem in your facility or in your practice area, and then do a little bit of research on that problem to come up with a idea for some sort of a new practice intervention that you would want to implement. And then identify the parts of the PICO statement. The PICO is the problem, the intervention, your comparison to the intervention, your outcome, and a time frame. The time frame in the real world of evidence-based practice is something that you don't always start with right away. I've asked for you all to identify a time frame for your PICO statements because you're going to have to do that when it comes time to do your evidence-based practice project part 2 later on in the class. So I want everybody to think about their time frame now. That's why many of you, I prompted you that you should go ahead and be looking at the time frame. A few things about the PICOs. Everybody has selected a very good problem. The problems that have been discussed in class are very pertinent, and you're going to every problem is one that you should be able to find some evidence to point to very specific interventions, and that you can use as a basis for supporting a new evidence-based practice initiative or intervention. But there's still a little bit of confusion with some of you on exactly what this is, and I know that you're struggling a little bit because you're thinking of this PICO as being like a nursing research project, and this is not a nursing research project. Nursing research is where you go and you don't really know what your outcomes are going to be, and so you take two different populations and implement some new practice and then do a research project to see what are the results. And that's great, that's important, but that's not really what evidence-based practice implementation is all about. Evidence-based practice implementation is where you take the research that's already been conducted to identify what the research says is the best evidence-based practice, and then look to implement that in your particular facility or in your organization, addressing the specific problem that you have. The things that are important here is that you have to have an intervention that is fairly specific, and at this point, many of you have rather vague interventions or interventions that aren't really specific yet enough to be usable, but that's part of the evidence-based practice project, is refining these things as we go along. The comparison is that intervention, or in most cases it's going to be whatever you're currently doing, that you're going to use to compare the intervention to see if you come up with the expected outcomes. The outcomes are important because they need to be observable and they need to be measurable. They also need to be specific in that they're not written in a way that it's, you're not going to be asking what is the effect of this particular intervention on the outcome. Does it go up or down? You're going to be looking for a specific intervention. For example, if you had a problem that you had increase in nosocomial infections or hospital-acquired infections in your hospital, and so your implementation was a new hand washing protocol, your comparison would likely be your current hand washing protocol, whatever it is, and then your outcome would be measuring the number of hospital-acquired infections over a given period of time, usually between 3 and 6 months for most evidence-based practice initiatives. In other words, you're not just doing a study on hand washing, you're actually implementing a new practice and then seeing if it's effective. Please review all of my discussion feedback in class. I gave most of you feedback, but don't just look at the feedback that I gave you. Please review all of the feedback from that week one, because it's going to be important as you move forward. If you don't have a well-developed PICO, it's like building a wall. If you don't start straight right at the beginning, as you go on down the line, it just gets more and more out of alignment. And so it's important to start with a good workable PICO before you start to talk about how you're going to develop this into an implementation project. One clarification: this is not something that you're actually going to be implementing. The actual outcome for this class, your final product, is going to be an evidence-based practice project done in 2 parts that are essentially going to be a proposal for what you would want to propose. So it's not something that you're going to actually implement, not something that you're going to expect to measure anything, but you just need to state what would you measure, or what will you be measuring if you're to actually implement this particular new intervention. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. But that's really the goal right now, is to, in week number 2, continue on this discussion. And the first thing you're going to do in your week 2 discussion is start with your PICO. And again, if I've given you feedback, or if you look at your PICO and if it doesn't really quite seem to be, very clear, or if it doesn't really address a new practice intervention with measurable outcomes, then you will want to look to refine that before you start week 2 and include that as the PICO for week number 2. And then you're going to be developing a literature search. The literature search and what you're going to do for that literature search is to identify what your keywords are going to be, your keywords and your alternate keywords for each component of the PICO statement. So for a problem, an intervention, a comparison, and outcomes, you're going to come up with terms that would relate to that particular part of the PICO, and then come up with terms, and then do a search and describe what the search strategy is. Essentially, this is going to be something that you're then going to take and include in your evidence-based practice projects. And so everything that you're doing now is work that will help you with that, so that by the time that you get to that actual written assignment in the coming weeks, you'll have it down pretty well. And have gotten enough feedback on it where you can refine it as you need to. Remember, when you're doing a search, a good search usually entails using a variety of different keywords. The keywords you start with may or may not be the ones that actually get you anything, so you might have to go back and review your keywords a little bit or revise them a bit. But at this point, really the idea is just to get you the idea of finding some research and finding some articles. And a good search in any one of the databases normally comes up with about between 25 and 100 articles roughly. Anything less than 25, you're probably missing some good articles. If you have any more than 100, you got too many articles in there that probably really don't pertain. So getting that number down is an important task. Also, you have one other assignment this week, which is to do your experiential exercise. And for this class, that is, you're going to be calling a librarian, preferably a librarian either in a hospital library or university library, and answering the template questions that are included in the assignment template that is posted in the class. Review the rubric and review the discussion expectations, but that is going to be a written assignment that is due the end of this week as well. The feedback from students in previous classes is that they really find this exercise to be a very workable one and something that really helps them to understand. The hospital librarian or a medical librarian is your best friend when it comes to doing any kind of nursing research or any kind of evidence-based practice, because they're the ones that can find you the information. If you're struggling in finding articles related to your PICO or related to your intervention and problem and outcome, contact your librarian. See if they can help you to locate the information. That's kind of what their primary responsibility is. That's what they're the experts at. So the discussions have been very good. I have graded all the discussions for week 1 already. I got kind of an early jump on that this weekend because I wanted to get the feedback. Remember, discussion throughout the week is required for full credit. Exceeding the minimum, so more than 2 responses to peers and posted over subsequent days that meet the criteria being substantive and that relate back to the question at hand. That's required for full credit. But so far for this week, the discussion has been very robust. They've been very good. They've been very complete. And so I commend everybody and look forward to another great week of discussion. As you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and I'll see you in the discussion forums.